Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. So yeah, we are at the end of the month again, so it's time to go through everything that I've picked up, and this time it is for March 2023. So yeah, there's a fair few titles to get through here, so yeah, let's dive right in. So first up, I've just got a few DVDs, and the first one I have here is Alive. Now this is a movie based on a true story about I think it was this Uruguayan rugby team in the 1970s who were on a plane and their plane crashed in the Andes Mountains. And yeah, this movie is basically about that and their survival story. Yeah, I have seen this movie before, but I spotted it in CEX for a pretty decent price. And yeah, I decided to add it to the collection. But yeah, it's got a great cast. You've got Ethan Hawke in there. You've got a lot of lesser known actors, but very familiar faces in there. But yeah, if you like your survival stories, I would definitely recommend it. It's a great movie, but yeah, that is Alive. Next up, I picked up this French thriller called The Crimson Rivers. Now, the best way I can describe this movie is it's basically the French version of Seven. It's very, very similar in tone, very similar kind of story, very grisly, very violent in places, but yeah, really enjoyable movie. Got a great cast. You've got Jean Reno in there, obviously best known for being in Leon. You've also got Vincent Cassel in there. And yeah, it's just a really enjoyable movie. The story is a little bit complex in places, certainly for a thriller like this. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It's got some great locations in there because I think a lot of it was shot in the French Alps. But yeah, really enjoyable thriller. And if you like movies like Seven, I would definitely recommend it. But yeah, that is The Crimson Rivers. Next up, I have two titles here to show you. But the first one we have is Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist, and Exorcist: The Beginning. Now, these movies are basically the same movie. I think what it was is they originally hired a director to make this movie, Paul Schrader, I believe, and he delivered this movie for the studio, and the studio didn't like it. And instead of reshooting the movie, they basically decided to completely start over, and they then made this one. And this one was directed by Rennie Harlan, who was best known for doing Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, and Nightmare on Elm Street 4. But I kind of wanted to watch these just because I'd never seen them before. I'd always heard they'd had a bad reputation amongst like Exorcist fans, but I still wanted to check them out anyway. Yeah, they are sort of basically about the same story, but the two films are very, very different. Exorcist: The Beginning is more of a horror movie, got more of, the typical kind of stuff you see in horror movies, whereas Dominion is more of a slower paced drama. But I probably did enjoy this one a little bit more. But yeah, they were okay. I wouldn't go out of my way to get them. I wouldn't pay ridiculous money for them. But if you like The Exorcist and you maybe want to check these movies out, if you can find them cheap, I'd recommend them. But other than that, yeah, they were okay. But yeah, we have Exorcist: The Beginning and Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist. Next DVD we have here is Highwaymen. Now, this is a movie I remember coming out. I remember it came out like 2004, 2005. And I remember at the time I wanted to watch it, mainly because it is directed by Robert Harmon, who is best known for directing The Hitcher, which is one of my personal favourite movies. And when I heard that this movie was very similar, I always wanted to watch it, but it's taken me until now to actually watch it. Stars Jim Caviezel, and he plays this guy whose wife is murdered at the beginning of the movie by this guy in a car, and he basically just goes on this mission to track this person down who's killed his wife. It does have elements of road movie to it, but not to the same extent as The Hitcher. But it's a decent little thriller. It's less than 80 minutes long, so it flies by like that. And yeah, it's not bad. You could definitely get better movies than this, but on the whole, I enjoyed it. But yeah, that is Highwaymen. Next DVD I picked up is K2. Now, the reason why I picked this one up is because I'm a huge fan of Michael Biehn, who is probably best known for being Kyle Reese in Terminator, but he was also in Aliens and The Abyss and Tombstone, The Rock. And yeah, I just wanted to check this movie out because I do like my mountain climbing movies, and yeah, he's in this one. This movie was okay. It had a very TV movie kind of quality to it. And it didn't really have much of a story. It didn't really have much sort of like peril in it, as you would probably expect from a mountain climbing movie, but it was okay. But yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to watch this one if you're looking for a really good mountain climbing movie. But yeah, like I said, it was okay. But yeah, that is K2. Next up, we have Stripes, and this is a movie that I remember watching this when I was at university, and yeah, I loved it. But I've not watched it since. I picked this up the other day, and I'm looking forward to rewatching it. It's basically, well, I think the movie was originally supposed to be Cheech and Chong join the army, but when that fell through, they decided to just cast Bill Murray in the movie. But he's also joined with Harold Ramis, who he obviously starred together with in Ghostbusters. But you've also got John Candy in there and a whole host of other people. And yeah, I just remember it's a really fun movie. It's kind of like just this comedy army movie, but then at the end it does kind of go a bit action heavy, which I always thought was unusual for a Bill Murray comedy. But yeah, I remember having a good time with it, and I'm looking forward to rewatching it. But yeah, that is Stripes. And the last DVD pickup we have is The Way of the Gun. Now, this is a movie that I only watched for the first time the other night, but I absolutely loved this film. It's basically a neo-noir, modern-day Western, but it stars Benicio del Toro and Ryan Philippe, and they play these two sort of petty criminals, and they kidnap this woman played by Juliette Lewis, and she is a surrogate mother to this wealthy gangster, and he has promised to give her like $1 million after she bears his child for him. And these two criminals decide to get in on a bit of that action, and yeah, obviously the gangster's not too happy about it and decides to send people out to get her back and to wage war against these two criminals. But yeah, it's just a fantastic movie. It feels like a mix of like Walter Hill, Sam Peckinpah, and Quentin Tarantino, but it's just got a lot of great elements in there, and it's directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who would go on to direct some of the later Mission Impossible movies, but he also wrote The Usual Suspects, I think just a few years earlier than this movie. But yeah, fantastic movie, and if you love your sort of gritty, violent, neo-noir gangster movies, definitely check it out. But yeah, that is The Way of the Gun. Right, so on to the Blu-rays now, and the first one we have here is Everybody Wants Some. This is a movie directed by Richard Linklater, and it's sort of seen as a bit of a spiritual sequel to his much popular movie Dazed and Confused, which is obviously about high school students in the 1970s. This one is very similar. It's about a group of guys who are just about to start college, and it takes place in 1980 or 1981. And that is basically it. It's kind of like a bit of a hangout movie, but just a great movie if you can remember that time, especially if you're an American and you can remember that time. It's got a great soundtrack, got a great cast, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was as good as Dazed and Confused, but I thought it was a really solid movie, and yeah, I can't say much more than that. That is Everybody Wants Some. Next Blu-ray pickup that we have is a Spanish import of a movie that is basically from my childhood, but we have Judge Dredd starring Sylvester Stallone. So yeah, as far as I'm aware, this movie does not have a Blu-ray release, at least here in the UK. I think it might do in the US, but here it's quite hard to track down. So in the end, I decided to just pick up the Spanish Blu-ray. I've had the DVD for the longest time, and I have to admit, I really love this movie. Like I said, I have a lot of nostalgia for it, but I actually enjoy this movie more so than the Carl Urban movie that we got about 10 years ago. I know this movie isn't very true to the source material, but I don't care. I just think this movie is a blast. I think Sylvester Stallone is great in it. And even though the movie isn't very close to the source material, I do think he was good casting for Judge Dredd. But yeah, I'm very glad to have it in the collection now. It looks great on Blu-ray, and yeah, it was just a blast revisiting it. But yeah, that is Judge Dredd. Next up, we have another import, and I think this might be an Australian import, but we have Striking Distance starring Bruce Willis. Now, the reason why I decided to pick this up is I was recently watching a video from my good friend and fellow YouTuber JT at the Movies, and he very recently did a video on his top 10 Bruce Willis movies. And I was really surprised and also very glad to see him mention this movie. And after he mentioned it, I realized I didn't have it in the collection, and I had to get it. Because I loved this movie. I remember it was on all the time, like back in the sort of the early noughties. It was one of those movies that was always on like ITV on like a Wednesday night, and I always used to really enjoy it. It has a very bad reputation, but I think it's a fantastic thriller. I think Bruce Willis is great in it. You've got Sarah Jessica Parker in there. She's great. And it's just a really decent thriller and great mystery, and I think it's very underrated, like I said. But yeah, that is Striking Distance. Next Blu-ray I picked up from CEX, and we have Terminator Salvation. And the only reason I picked this up is because it was only £1. I spotted it in CEX, and I realised I have not seen this movie since it came out in the cinema back in 2008, 2009. And I remember I didn't like it. I remember I just didn't get anything out of it, but I remember being excited about it at the time because we were finally getting, that Terminator movie set in the future. I think that's the Terminator movie we were all waiting for. But yeah, like I said, I remember being disappointed in it. But yeah, it's been a good 14, 15 years since I've seen this movie. So I feel the time is right for a rewatch. So yeah, that's why I picked it up. And yeah, it was only cheap. So if I still don't like it, it's not going to be any great loss. But yeah, that is Terminator Salvation. Next up, we have another import, and this is a movie that is very infamous at the moment because it doesn't have any sort of Blu-ray or 4K release, but it is, of course, True Lies. Again, this is a Spanish release, and yeah, I've had this movie on DVD for the longest time, and yeah, I've just got tired of waiting for the Blu-ray or 4K if it's ever going to come out. So I thought I'd just get this Spanish release. But again, this is another movie from my childhood. This is probably my favourite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and I think it might have been the first Schwarzenegger movie I ever remember seeing. I remember being very, very young when I saw this movie, and I think a lot of the comedy aspects in it kind of probably went over my head as a kid, but I just used to love it for the action scenes, and even still, I think this is probably one of the greatest action movies ever, even to this day. It's just a fantastic movie from start to finish, and yeah, it looks pretty good on Blu-ray. It could be better, but it is the best we have at the moment. But yeah, that is True Lies. Next up, we have another import, and this is a German import, and this is for Unlawful Entry. This is a movie that stars Kurt Russell, Ray Liotta, and Madeline Stowe. Kurt Russell and Madeline Stowe play this married couple, and they are attacked by this guy trying to rob their house at the beginning of the movie. They call the police. One of the police officers who attends is played by Ray Liotta. And after this all blows over, he becomes friends with the married couple, but then he starts to grow a bit of an unhealthy obsession for them, and he starts stalking them, and he just becomes obsessed with them, and things take a very dangerous turn from there. But yeah, this is a fantastic thriller, and just one of the very many Kurt Russell movies from the 90s that's just great. I feel like he had such a great run in the 90s, Kurt Russell. Obviously, he's got this movie, but he's got Tombstone and Backdraft and Breakdown and Executive Decision. Just so many great movies from the 90s. And yeah, this is probably one of my favourites from Kurt Russell. But yeah, that is Unlawful Entry. Next up, we have Vertical Limit. So as I mentioned earlier, I picked up that movie K2, but after I watched it, I realized I wanted to get back into some of my mountain climbing movies, and I realized I didn't have this movie on physical media, and this again was one that I just loved as a teenager. I think I was about 10 or 11 when this came out, and I always had a blast with this movie. I think it's very underrated, and yeah, maybe it is a bit over the top and a bit silly with some of the mountain climbing aspects, but I just think it's a really enjoyable movie. You've got a great cast. You've got Chris O'Donnell, Bill Paxton, Scott Glenn, and it's just a great sort of like rescue mission mountain climbing movie. And yeah, I can't say much more than that. It's just a lot of fun, and it was great to revisit it after all these years. But yeah, that is Vertical Limit. Next up, we've got a few movies from the Radiance film label, a fairly new label here in the UK, but the first one that we have is a movie called Filler Up with Super. This is a French movie, and it is basically again, another sort of hangout movie. It's just about this group of guys who basically go on this road trip to southern France. And that is basically it. I can't really say much more than that. It's very loose with its plot, but I really enjoyed it. I think it was released in the 70s, but yeah, very of its time. But like I said, just a great sort of hangout movie. Yeah, there's not really much more I can say about it, but I did have a good time with it. But that is Filler Up with Super. And the next pickup from that label is Welcome to the Dollhouse. Now, this is a movie that I have seen before, and I remember I didn't like it the first time I watched it. It didn't really click with me, but when Radiance Films announced this one, I decided I wanted to give it another go. And yeah, on rewatch, I really enjoyed it. This is a great movie, and if you've ever felt like an outcast at school, or you were maybe bullied, or something along those lines, you may find a lot to relate to with this movie. Just a great sort of coming of age high school comedy drama, but yeah, really underrated. Very low budget, very independent, but it's just a fantastic movie, and yeah, I'm really glad to have revisited it. But yeah, that is Welcome to the Dollhouse. And the final film that I picked up from Radiance Films this month was Walking the Edge. This is a 1980s cult thriller starring Robert Forster and Nancy Kwan. Nancy Kwan plays this woman whose husband and son are murdered by this gang, and she basically decides to take revenge against them. And along the way, she meets this cab driver played by Robert Forster, who just joins forces with her because why not? I was a bit disappointed with this movie, I've got to admit. I thought it would be something along the lines of like Collateral with Tom Cruise, but with a bit more of that gritty sort of 1980s edge to it. But for the most part, I found this movie kind of slow, and it just didn't really do an awful lot for me. But maybe on a rewatch, I'll enjoy it. But yeah, that is Walking the Edge. Next up, we have a brand new release from 88 Films, and we have Gorgeous, starring Jackie Chan. Now, I only just watched this movie last night for the first time, and I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a very charming little movie. It's not really an action movie, so if you're a Jackie Chan fan and you're expecting this to be like his other movies where there's lots of action, lots of outrageous stunts, you might be a little bit disappointed. There are a few fight scenes in it, but nothing to the same degree as, like, say, Police Story or Project A. Like I said, it is more of a romantic comedy, but I really enjoyed it nonetheless. Just a really sweet story. The two sort of main characters have they have great chemistry, and there is a fantastic fight scene at the end between Jackie Chan and Brad Allen, I believe it is. And yeah, it's a really good fight scene, but yeah, like I said, just a really sweet, charming movie. Nothing special, nowhere near Jackie Chan's best, but I had a really good time with it. And yeah, again, another really great release from 88 Films. But yeah, that is Gorgeous. Next up, we have another release from 88 Films, and we have Nowhere to Run, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now, I know 88 Films have released quite a few Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, but I haven't really been picking them up because most of them I already own on Blu-ray, so I've never really seen the point in getting many of them. But this was the only one that I didn't have in my collection, and I think this is probably one of the better, more underrated Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. He basically just plays this prisoner who is being transported on this bus, but he manages to escape, and he takes seclusion with this family that live sort of in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, I just thought it was, well, from what I can remember, I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to giving it a rewatch. But yeah, again, another fantastic release from 88 Films. I think this comes with like a poster and postcards and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to giving it a rewatch, but that is Nowhere to Run. Next up, we have another big release from the last week or so, but we have George A. Romero's Martin on 4K. Now, I have to admit, I have seen this movie before. I saw it about 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember I did not like this movie at all. But over the years, I've always heard people talk about how much they love it and how much they think it's one of Romero's better movies. So I've always wondered if maybe it just didn't click with me the first time I watched it for whatever reason. So yeah, I decided to get this release of it, and I have rewatched it. And yeah, I did enjoy it a lot more. I think when I watched it the first time, I think I watched it on like YouTube, and I remember the quality was really bad. I remember watching it quite late at night when I was kind of tired, so maybe that didn't help. But yeah, on a rewatch, I really enjoyed it. I still don't think it's one of George Romero's best movies, and I do think it is a little bit overhyped. But on the whole, I really enjoyed it, and the story is quite deep considering the type of movie it is. And it's a fantastic release from Second Sight. Yeah, some great special features, great sort of booklet with lots and lots of essays in there. But yeah, if you're a fan of this movie, I would definitely pick up this release, because I imagine it won't be around for much longer. But yeah, that is George A. Romero's Martin. Next up, we have from Arrow Video, Mill of the Stone Women. This is a release I've been after for a while. I've been waiting for it to go down in price, and yeah, it went down in price on Amazon, and I decided to jump at it. It's a movie I have seen before. I think I watched it on the Arrow Player sometime last year, and I remember really enjoying it. A very early 1960s Italian horror movie. And this release is fantastic. It's the typical Arrow Video box set. You get 4 cuts of the movie on this, which is pretty cool. So as I've watched, I think it was the original Italian cut. I'll go for a different cut when I rewatch it. But yeah, a really enjoyable Italian horror, and definitely one of the more underrated ones. But yeah, that is Mill of the Stone Women. Another new release from 88 Films, and we have The Whip and the Body. Now, this is a movie I have been dying for a release for a long time, and the reason why is because it's directed by one of my favourite Italian directors, which is Mario Bava. He's directed some amazing movies. Well, he did direct some amazing movies back in the 1960s and the 70s, and he was kind of like almost kind of considered the creator of the giallo genre of horror movies. And yeah, this is a great release from 88 Films and a really enjoyable movie. It stars Christopher Lee. He plays the son of a count who is banished from his castle because of an affair he has with the daughter of a maid. The daughter ends up committing suicide, and everyone blames him for her death. And when he comes back to the castle, he gets murdered, and part of the movie is trying to figure out who murdered him, but at the same time, Christopher Lee's character comes back from the dead and starts haunting the remaining people who are in this castle. Really enjoyable movie, very atmospheric, very creepy. Christopher Lee's great in it. The only downside to it is, for some reason, his voice is dubbed by a different actor. So whenever his character talks, it doesn't quite feel like Christopher Lee, even though it is obviously him. But yeah, really enjoyable movie. If you like your sort of gothic Italian horror movies, definitely check it out. But yeah, that is The Whip and the Body. Next up, I picked up this release in CEX. I found it for a pretty good price. I kind of missed out on this when it first came out because I didn't really want to pay the full price for it. But it is Wild Things on 4K from Arrow Video, and this is the box set version with all the good stuff in there. I've seen this movie before. I rewatched it the other week, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Just a great sort of thriller with so many twists in it. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy how many twists there are in this movie. It's exhausting by the end of it, but really enjoyable movie. I didn't think the 4K transfer was anything special, if I'm being honest. So if you're only a casual fan of this movie, I'd say maybe just go with the Blu-ray, because for me the 4K was it was good, but it wasn't great. It's a great release nonetheless from Arrow Video, but yeah, that is Wild Things. And lastly, we have an item that I have literally just picked up in the last few hours. I was on the way home from work and I decided to stop off in CEX because I knew they had this item here, and I've been thinking about getting it for a while, and it is The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones Volume 1. And yeah, this is of course the prequel series that came out in the early 90s. And yeah, this is volume one of that series. Now, I can remember watching this show when I was a kid. I remember I had a few of the episodes on VHS, and I remember enjoying them. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Indiana Jones, the movies, the character, and yeah, I remember having a good time with them. The thing I remember most about this series is that it wasn't really like the movies as such. You didn't really have Indy going and exploring in tombs and things like that. It was more of like an espionage, World War One kind of show, but also very educational. And yeah, I remember having a good time with it, but I've never seen the series in full, and for the longest time, I have been wanting to get into it. And yeah, it looks like now I will be delving into that series. But yeah, like I said, this is of course volume one. And yeah, if I enjoy it, hopefully I'll be able to track down volume two and three. But yeah, that is The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones, volume one. So there you go, guys. Those are my pickups for the month of March 2023. Let me know in the comments if you've picked up any of these releases. Have you seen any of the movies I've mentioned? I would love to hear your thoughts. But until then, I will leave the video there. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you all on the next one. So take care.